Yo, what is going on, everybody? It's Brave Cat here once again with another Frontier Signals update. So before we run through all this here, let's take one more quick look over here at this large tropical storm going on over in the West Pacific. So, it looks like this is actually being talked about a little bit more than I figured it would, just because of how spectacular it is. So, it seems like this is actually, potentially one of the largest storms that the Earth can actually produce. So just looking at the radar here on this, I mean, it is quite something here. So it's definitely a good thing that it is not, making landfall anywhere. Otherwise, that could be pretty devastating. And taking a back look at the space weather here. So again, we have that pretty large coronal hole coming to face us. And I believe when this same coronal hole came by the first time, about a month ago, that is when we were having all those 7 magnitude quakes. So when this thing comes back again in full view, we could definitely expect to see some more seismic activity happening here. But I'll cover that here in a minute. So things have been really quiet other than that. And, even like all these random plasma filaments that are, around on the sun here. This one's actually better for viewing that. So you have these random plasma filaments here. And hopefully those don't go off, but, so far those have been pretty stable. And, that's pretty much what we're looking like here. We've got that comet Pan-STARRS, which is going to be approaching us at the end of April. So here pretty soon, I want to kind of, show some pictures of that and maybe some more information on, what are the different stances on what could happen when that comet does go between the Earth and the Sun. Some scientists are saying it could spell some sort of cataclysm, and others, not so much. So just try to get to the bottom of that and, go here into the earthquakes, where we've had less tremors over here on the West Coast than we have had in the past week. But, that could always change as well. We just had this new round of those clusters from yesterday. And this is on the more exterior plate boundary. So I suppose if I take it to this view, and actually get a look at the plate boundaries here, and take that back here. So, we have these 2 different plate boundaries on the West Coast here that kind of split off and then connect back together. And it is on the exterior fault zone. So if we see that happening on the interior zone, then that could be a lot worse. So pretty much going to be looking at that, which could develop next. And even this, the tremor swarm by San Francisco, that one has also not slowed down at all. So it's still going pretty strong here. Still has a pretty large stack going on for that. I don't know if it's actually showing up properly there. Maybe it has actually in the last 24 hours. That actually has slowed down a bit. So we've had pretty much everything. So the cluster stopped, the main tremors have slowed down, and the slow slip activity has slowed down. So, that could only mean really one of 2 things. Either the plate has kind of hit a budge and is now building up pressure, or simply that the previous round of pressure coming in here has kind of resolved itself and there's not really much movement happening right now. Probably the latter is probably more correct, considering, we only had a couple 5s up here, and, the rest of the Pacific has been fairly quiet. Regular deep events, but nothing really out of the ordinary. So hopefully that is the case. But again, when we see this coronal hole come and point straight at us, things could definitely change on a dime there. And we could definitely see some larger activity happening. Things as well have slowed down over here in Europe. So nothing really to report over by Italy. There was a 3, but it was like way up here in the mountains or something. And, all the other usual suspect spots here, including Greece. Not really too much coming out of there. So, things are actually looking pretty nominal right now. And, I'm kind of getting ready to make the next large update to the website. So, and I think this is going to make things a lot easier on the peer-reviewed paper section if I just simply go ahead and download the PDFs and host them directly. That would help with the overall performance and just make it even easier to have these on here, because there's a lot more to add, to the point where at some point here I'm probably going to make an individual web page for each of these categories here, because there's eventually going to be a lot of them. And, in regards to the star chart project stuff here, so I mean, we have this more astrological chart, which, does have some cool stuff here. You can take a look at all the retrogrades, alignments, and some, very basic kind of meanings, potential meanings for some of those, which, it's not something that I obsess over, but I find that, if I just it just kind of pops in my head to check these things on kind of an intuitive level, then, I find there's a lot more kind of synchronistic stuff. But if I just take a look at this every single day, it doesn't really do anything for me. So, let me know if there's any improvements you can think of here. But this is going to lead into the pole shift star navigation tool that I'm working on. So it's going to use the kind of similar thing here of having, applying the coordinates of stars to create a tool that will allow people to functionally make their own navigational star charts, kind of based on how, people traditionally navigated using the stars, based on any kind of orientation of the planet that you want. So I know there's a lot of different ECDO theories and pole shift theories. So, depending on which one you want to go with, or multiple, in fact, you could do that. So hopefully can get some good progress done on that. And there's some other things on the website here, mostly with the volcanism and earthquake section. So with the volcanoes, it's not actually that useful just having these maps on here. So I want to have a section that actually lists out all of the most recent activity. And same thing with the earthquake page here. There's probably a couple things I can add just with this map, but then I also want to have like a list of the most prominent recent earthquakes going on as well, and just make this thing a little bit more useful. So that's pretty much what I got going on. So that'll about do it for today's update. Hope y'all enjoyed, got something out of it. Please like and subscribe for more, and share this video if you dare. And as always, I'll catch you all in the next.